Occult Leger. Make sure you say hello to him. And we've got about a minute and a half here, guys. Minute and a half. And let's see here. We're caught up in the chat room so far. All right. Get all comfy here. And Science Bob, I miss your beard.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Sorry.
I know.
It's just too dadgum hot down here and 9 months out of the year for a beard. And the only reason I did it was COVID.
I know. I know. The Leafs will not win the Stanley Cup in 2021. Please, no lying in our chat room, okay? No bullshit in our chat room. The Leafs are not winning the cup, okay? 67, my friend, 67. Thurston Howell III, how's Lovey? Let us know. And get ready, guys. Here we go in like 10 seconds. Remember, the Super Chat is open. Hit that thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways, whatever you feel necessary. Let's have a rockin' show tonight. We're on in 5 seconds. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates across North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free for you at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Every second week of the new month, we always bring in Science Bob. Science Bob McGwier. Yes, we love the man around here because it's the one time of the month where we say goodbye to the woo and hello to the who, what, where, when, why, and how with Science Bob and friends. Now, Dr. Bob McGwier, formerly of Virginia Tech University, comes in to discuss the scientific and practical side of everything from the paranormal to UFOs. Tonight, we are joined by Olav Phillips. Now, you've heard Olav many a time on this show, but he is pitch hitting, that is, for an ailing Alan Greenfield, the author of The Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts. Olav is the publisher of that book and is also a student of Greenfield's in learning the cipher, symbolism, and oh, so much more. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, I will bring you the SOR Newswire, brought to you by Paranoia Magazine. Science Bob, it's always a pleasure to have you on this show. And before we even bring you in, I know you spoke at the virtual UFO Con 2021 of Lorien Fenton's this past weekend, and I want to say thank you so much for your kind words on what you were saying about me and Spaced Out Radio. I really do appreciate that, man.
Well, Dave, look, I have a good time here. We're good friends, and I've learned a lot hanging around this show about the area that I found myself thrown into the deep end 2 years ago, and it's been a good place to learn. And we have a lot of fun, Dave. It's a good time.
It really is a good time. And I know you're kind of new. You were hoping for Alan Greenfield. Unfortunately, he is sick at this time. Olav got a hold of me just a couple of days ago, and he's like, dude, I can step in if you want. And I was like, yeah, man, let's do it. Let's do it. So, Olav Phillips, it's always a pleasure when you are on Spaced Out Radio, my friend. You're one of the good guys in this field, and I'm glad you're here with us to educate us.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. And again, Alan really wanted to be on tonight. We had quite a debate about it, but his voice, it just wasn't there. So he asked me to fill in for him. So I will do my best. I will do my best.
Well, the good part about that, Olav, is that he's not like, in the hospital with COVID. At least that sounds like something manageable.
Yeah. It's he's older, so sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get over stuff. But yeah, he's doing good. He's resting his voice.
Well, let's have everybody in the audience, including us, keep him in our thoughts. And if you do it, prayers. We're wishing you well, Alan, and wish you could be here. I look forward to talking to you.
Well, Science,
yes, he will come back on. He wanted to do this real bad.
Science Bob, let me ask you this before I turn it over to you with Olav here. What has been your interest, Science Bob, in the secret cipher?
Well, that is really straightforward. I bet I'm the same as almost everyone else who has ever heard of it in the last few years. I watched Hellier, and I saw Alan and Tenny and all the folks on the regular crew for Hellier, and they invoked the secret cipher, applied it to some messages, brought in Greenfield and Tenny, and it was kind of their guide. And I went, what the heck is this? So I found out that Alan's books were still in print, and even better, they had taken the Men in Black and the Secret Cipher monographs and put them into one book and called it The Complete Secret of the Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts. And I have the complete Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts, and it's a curiosity. Well, what is so curious about it is the unbelievably rich history behind it. And I hope, we get to go through that. And if, and Olav is able to comment on some of that, because it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's, the Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts and the Secret Rituals of the Men in Black, were always intended to be one book, but he had split them into two for a variety of reasons. So when I came to him because I was a fan, and I said, hey, we got to get these back in print. They had been printed by Illuminate after Ron Bonds died, unfortunately. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But, they had gone out of print, and I felt that they really needed to be in print because the whole secret cipher, the NAC cipher, is very much an oddity. It's very strange. I've seen some very powerful things done with it. So, I felt that it needed to be out there.
Well, I can say this. My curiosity went straight through the roof so I'm going to tell you, I made an assumption that there was no BS going on Hellier, and they used it, and every time they used it and did something, strange things happened, and they had experiences, and they got someplace. So it was clear to me that that all sorts of synchronicities were going on around it. Olav, it was really interesting.
Well, I'll tell you this. My watching of Hellier was actually it's quite a humorous story. That my friend Taylor had kept calling me saying, "Dude, you got to watch the show Hellier. You got to watch the show Hellier." And I kept telling him, I have no interest in it. And finally he calls me up one day. He's like, you really got to watch Hellier. And I said, look, I'm over it with Paul Hellier. He seems like a really great guy. But if you're the Minister of Defense in Canada and you know absolutely nothing about UFOs, you either know nothing at all or you're lying. And I'm just over it. And he never says anything. He seems like a wonderful Canuck and a great guy, but there's nothing new. He says, no, not Paul Hellier. You beep. He's like, no, it's the show. And so I watched the show, and, I published the book. I wrote the intro. I knew what was going on. And for me personally, once I watched the show, the balloons started. I actually get the balloons as well.
That's
I say most of them.
It was. I had seen other things that Carl was involved in, and I had no idea he had anything to do with Hellier until his name kept coming up during the show. So besides the crew and Carl and the site, it was really interesting. Okay, so look, it's before we just kind of dive off into the secret cipher, there's some history here that has to be mentioned. I mean, I'm surely half the audience or more doesn't know what Kabbalah is, don't know who Aleister Crowley is, don't know what Thelema is, don't know how Alan got all this stuff from all of that and put it all together. Go through some history as you know it with us, so both me and our audience can do a little catching up.
Well, I'll try to just keep it simple because there are entire reams of books written on the history of all this stuff. But basically, Kabbalah is fundamentally, it's a form of Jewish mysticism. And it has this concept of there's a tree of life, and a lot of it has to do with geometric patterns and placements of things. And so Aleister Crowley, at the turn of the century, was a very interesting man. I oddly, synchronistically, lived in the town that he is from, Leamington Spa. But, he's from a town called Leamington Spa. He started to get involved in ritual magic at a very young age. There's various stories about him, whether, he was a secret agent or whatever, but he self-proclaimed as the beast, that he called himself the beast. And he was basically an alchemist and a magician, and in some cases probably a charlatan as well. But there's a whole thing about the magus. You have to be a magus, you have to be all these things at once. You have to be, an entertainer. You have to be a magician. You have to be a charlatan. You have to be all these things at once to be a magus, right? And so he was a magus, and so he had created a religion called Thelema, and the basis of it was something called the Liber Al, or the Book of Law, that was dictated to Crowley, and I think it was the early 1900s. I think it was like 1905 or 1908, that an entity called Aiwass had dictated this book to Crowley, and Crowley dutifully noted it down and printed it. And there are a whole bunch of books, but the Liber Al, the Book of Law, is like the first, and it's the quintessential book of Thelema. Well, when he was receiving the dictation from Aiwass, he was told that there's a cipher inside the book, and in the dictation there are a series of tables within the book that are supposed to correspond to that. And he never figured out the cipher. It was believed that there was a cipher in it, but nobody knew for sure, and nobody had cracked it until the 70s. In the 70s, a guy named James Lees cracked the cipher and figured out how to unravel it. And basically, it's what you do is it's the ALW cipher, the new Aeon English Kabbalah cipher, cipher number 6, the secret cipher of the UFO It has a bunch of different names. But basically what it was is that there's a conversion of the letters ALW. A is 1, L is W2, A is 1, L is 2, W is 3. And you draw lines. And based on those lines, you end up with a geometric star. So this is like geometric magic. And so you create sigils or symbols by interconnecting these lines. And so what he was able to do is to map out the numerical values of the English letters, the alphabet, and then apply them to the Book of Law using and so what you do is you put in words, and then those words have a numeric value based on this geometric star that comprises the cipher. And so you take the total value of those letters and you look at the value of the letters. That tells you one thing, but the other thing that it does is that when you search the Book of Law, you find other words with the same value. And what Greenfield had discovered is that a lot of the names that were used in the 1960s in the contactee movement, that they were actually, mirror's the wrong word, but their numerical value actually equaled other words that became very interesting, right? So, you put in a name and you get a numerical value that was equal to Jehovah or Jesus, right? And you get these kind of mappings inside the cipher, and he felt that was extremely powerful. And so it kind of evolved from there. But that's like the 2-minute version of the history of it. But Thelema is still an active religion. There are Thelemites all over the world, and there's various organizations that represent them.
One of the most interesting things about Thelema to me, I told you my various fields. So
right.
I founded the company, Hawkeye 360. And that's part of my practice of aerospace engineering, and it has 6 satellites in orbit right now. And so I'm completely familiar with and actually worked at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And of course,
sure.
Jack Parsons, who was the kind of founding father at the Jet Propulsion Laboratories, rocket engineer, actually got some serious things going out there. He was a serious adherent to Thelema.
He was. He was actually in direct contact with Crowley. And yeah, JPL, Jack Parsons' lab, right? He founded Aerojet, did a lot in the field of rocket fuel until he blew himself up. But yeah, he was very much a Thelemite, and he actually eventually had a falling out with Crowley. The Jack Parsons had attempted to do something that's called the Babylon working, and basically he and L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology fame and a woman whose name I always forget went out to the desert to do what's called a working, and which is basically a ritual. And the idea was that they were going to open a portal and have the sacred feminine descend through the portal and impregnate the woman, and then the star child effectively would be born, and it would usher in a new era. And there are variants of this story. Some people believe that the end result was supposed to be the homunculus that was supposed to usher in at the end of the world. But after they did it, nothing happened. And so effectively, in a magical sense, right, the Parsons had failed. And when he reported that back to Crowley, Crowley was very unhappy and actually wrote quite a letter to him talking about how he had failed. And if you look at Crowley's correspondence, he basically runs him into the ground and said, I put too much faith in this guy, that he wasn't capable of it, and a lot of other things. So yeah, he had a falling out with Crowley eventually.
So was the woman the Sarah Northrop?
I honestly don't remember.
As in Northrop Grumman. I mean, the level of involvement of all this in kind of everything that went on in the aerospace industry at the end of World War II, and we did paperclip and bought the Germans over. It's just fascinating.
Well, and it continues. I mean, there a lot of times when you look at the launch windows for, various satellite launches, or at the time space shuttle launches, or even rocket launches, right? That a lot of these launches correspond to astrologically significant events. And as another correlation, that if you look at the names of a lot of the vehicles that we use, they're mythical in nature, right? That there are some that aren't, but a lot of the space shuttles had, mythical names, and the code names for various things are mythical. The challenge coins and patches that are made for various missions are very mythical and symbolic in nature.
They certainly are.
There's something larger at work. I mean, you look at some of the patches, right? If you've ever seen Trevor Peglin's work, where he, I would tell you, but I'd have to destroy you, the book, that you see wizards and omega symbols and various alchemy symbols that are embedded within this. And to know what those symbols are, you either have to be read into the project, which is unlikely, or, you have to basically be an alchemist. So, yeah.
It's pretty strange. So, but I'm going to turn it over to Dave here, but I just wanted to comment. So, people in the chat room call me CIA Bob because I was in the intelligence community for 30 years before I left to go to Virginia Tech. And the reason I got into all that satellite work for Hawkeye 360 is I spent 8 years working with the National Reconnaissance Office. So I get those details. I get those. I get those crazy alignments. But so I'm I'm also adept at astronomy as an amateur, and sure. The fact that it lines up with zodiacal signs and other things can also be because they're trying to target at a particular coordinate on the sky that just so happens to pass through that zodiacal sign. So I'm not convinced it's not coincidence, but those symbols on those fairing decals, they're full of mythology, as you say. Dave, your turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Bob. Olav, with this secret cipher, what is the importance of it to not only everyday people, but everyday life? Why should we be interested in this?
Well, so, there are different answers for that to different people, right? That it has a lot of uses, but, it's basically, it's a way, this is a little wooey, I get it, but this is the answer, right? That it's basically a way to communicate beyond, right? That it was always Greenfield's notion that who you're interfacing with, they're ultra-terrestrial, so they could be interdimensional or from a number of different places, right? But they're ultra-terrestrials, right? This is the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis. Well, when you're engaging the secret cipher, innately when you engage the cipher at all, you're committing a magical act. That the use of the cipher in and of itself is a magical act, and it opens up a pathway to get information back. So you ask a question or you put in a word that is significant to you to see what the result is, to give it more significance. Like you could put in someone's name and it'll give you symbolic representations of the individual. Greenfield is so adept at it that he said that if you can structure it correctly, if you put in information about a UFO sighting, that you will actually get back the location of the next UFO sighting. I'm not able to do that. I can do different things with it than he does. But in my case, probably the greatest example that I have of how I used it is that I had a friend from high school who passed on, and his sister was very upset and she wanted to communicate with him. And we were discussing various methods of how to communicate with him, right? Do we want to use an SB7 or a pendulum, or, there's a lot of different wooey ways to talk to spirits. But one day she calls me up and she's panicking, and I'm like, why are you panicking? And she says, well, there's a picture that just appeared on my phone. Right. And I said, okay. And you didn't put it there? No, I didn't put it there. I said, okay. And so, we were trying to figure out what the deal was with the picture, because the picture was obviously relevant to something. And so eventually she had an app that identified plants because she likes plants, and she looked up what the plant was, and I put the name of the plant into the cipher, and with the intent, right, because this is magic, right, so intent is important. I put in the intent of, did you put this there? And buried within the results was, I did, I put it there, right? Literally it said I did. And then another line says, I put it there. And then it said, lower a few lines down, it said, I love you. which was a message to her.
Olav, I'm going to get you to hold on. Science Bob, you hold on. We're at the break here at the bottom of the hour. Science Bob and friends. Special guest, Olav Phillips. We're talking secret ciphers, symbology, occult, and more on Spaced Out Radio, Science Bob and friends. Stay tuned. All right, we're clear, guys.
Man, that half hour went fast.
No shit.
I talk too much.
Oh, this is just fascinating stuff.
Well, actually, you know what's interesting is the NAC cipher, Cipher 6, is only one cipher. That there in occultism, there are many, many, many ciphers. So if you like ciphers, there's tons of them.
I don't get it. I understand because you and I have talked hours upon hours about this, Olav, but I just still do not get it. Still,
I can teach you.
I know you can.
I can teach you.
So as a mathematician, I'm going to tell you my and somewhat religious person, my curiosity is through the roof.
Well, I didn't even get into symbolism stuff. Actually,
we're going there, brother. We're going there.
Actually, I don't discuss it much. The people on YouTube will probably find this interesting. But I actually, in the process of working with Alan on stuff in general, even beyond the secret cipher, I actually cracked another cipher. The secret cipher led me to another cipher that's actually more powerful.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interestingly, it's a two-stage cipher, right? So there's an initial cipher that you use to get the initial decoding, and then you have to process it with a second cipher that's a skip cipher in order to get the message. But the message that comes back it requires very little effort to figure out what it says.
Fabulous.
Yeah, but that one isn't based on Crowley. But there are a number of them. I mean, there's the Bible Code, and there's tons.
Oh yeah. For 2/3 of my time in the IC, I was a cryptographer and a cryptanalyst for the National Security Agency.
Well, you know why. Well, maybe I should say it on the show, but you know why there are so many ciphers in occultism, right?
Oh yeah.
Because the guys that were doing this, many times, they did it under penalty of death. So they would encode, like encoded everything.
Yep.
So they encoded everything. So there are ciphers within ciphers within ciphers.
Interesting.
That's what makes modern alchemy so difficult, is because the original alchemists that you would look back at and say, okay, how did you do X? Well, they encoded it. So you have to try to decipher what they wrote, because they didn't write it in English.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can get into more of that.
We got 2 minutes, boys. 2 minutes.
All right. The balloon thing is unreal, though.
Oh yeah.
They're harbingers. They function as guideposts, basically.
Like owls?
Well, owls are harbingers. Owls also represent other things, depending on who you talk to. I mean, they're supposed to be a litmus test for screen memories for abductees and other things.
Yes, I knew that. Yeah, I'm familiar with Michael, what's his name's work and writings. Mark, I mean. Yeah, right. I'm familiar with his books.
Yeah.
All right, boys. About just over a minute here. It's fun times tonight. Fun times.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, New York
Absolutely.
Anthony, how you doing? Vector Scalar, good to see you. Wagon Breath, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. I really do appreciate the love and support. And yes, Looney, I feel the same way. Looney says, I've asked the Vancouver Canucks to be my pallbearers when I die so they can let me down one more time. I know, my friend. Solaire, how you doing? Good to have you here. And let's see here. I think we're caught up right now. And Super Chat is a great way to support what we do on this show. Otherwise, if you're brand new here, don't forget to hit that thumbs up or thumbs down. And most importantly, hit that subscribe button because we really want to hit 15,000 before my birthday on May 24th. Here we go, everyone, with the second half hour. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway right now. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, all you got to do is check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on right now with Science Bob and Friends. Bob is Dr. Bob McGwier, formerly of Virginia Tech University. Special guest tonight, Mr. Olav Phillips, who is the publisher and student of Alan Greenfield and his book, The Secret Cipher of the UFO Nuts. And this is where we go. Dr. Bob.
Okay, yes. So, and the current version you can get it from Amazon is the complete secret cipher of the UFO Nuts. There are the older versions, and some of them that are split into two books are also there used, but the current version is complete secret cipher of the UFO Nuts, and it has the secret rituals of the Men in Black and secret cipher of the UFO Nuts in one volume. So, before we go just a little bit deeper, I just want to kind of go back to a little more history. It was really interesting for me to figure out that men who are known to ufology or were very heavily involved with Alan. Gray Barker and John Keel had a relationship with him. Can you tell us in the audience anything about how they kind of got hooked up together?
Well, and Jim Moseley as well. I mean, Alan was very early into the UFO scene. And so as the kind of UFO scene was growing, he was in there, doing some of the very early work on, sightings and landings and whatever. And I think, I don't know the details for Keel, but for Barker and Moseley, that they would cross paths a lot because they would go to the conventions and they would, work on projects. And so there was a very tight-knit community early on, back in the 60s where these guys were working together, and they were all, like Alan, a bit of a character. So they all kind of got along and, they would hang out and over time, there was a friendship built up.
Yeah, it's just people may not remember, or maybe may not even know. Gray Barker's, I think his most famous work is Silver Bridge, and Alan wrote the preface. That's correct. Yes. So he knew Keel personally. I mean, he knew all these guys personally. Yeah, I got to tell you, all those stories around the things going on over there in West Virginia, which became the book, The Mothman Prophecies. That stuff was really weird. And the thing that's so amazing to me is as many people that are interested in UFOs and other strange things like that, they've heard of the Mothman Prophecy movie, and they don't even know that it's based on reality. And there were hundreds of eyewitnesses that would go down to the Ohio River and watch UFOs fly up and down them every night before the bridge collapsed. It was just amazing.
Yeah, and it's not just, he didn't just write the one book. I mean, he wrote a whole series of books. Disneyland of the Gods, Jadoo. I mean, there's a whole bunch of books that Keel wrote. He also did several newsletters. He wrote a book on jokes. He wrote a book on how to make $1 million. I mean, he wrote a lot of stuff.
He was an interesting character, and if I don't have it wrong, and I don't believe I do, I know he wrote a major book on it. But did he actually coin the term ultra-terrestrials?
I believe he did.
I think he's the original. His book, Ultra-Terrestrials, is I think the original place where that name showed up. Yeah, Keel was really important. And the other thing is, a lot of people don't know how much Keel influenced Jacques Vallée's thinking.
Oh, Keel has in one way or another, I would argue that he's influenced pretty much all of our thinking. And
right.
And this notion of the ultra-terrestrial is very powerful. Excuse me, because one of the things that the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis kind of argues is that all these things are linked together. That it's, traditionally, right, we think in the sense of, well, there's UFOs over here, cryptozoology over here, paranormal stuff over here, occultism over here, magic over here, and whatever. But the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis argues that it's all one contiguous experience, that ghosts are linked to UFOs, are linked to cryptids, that, where you see this with a place like the Skinwalker Ranch, right? That you have everything. You have the UFOs, you have the cryptids, you have ghosts, that places where there are a lot of ghost sightings, there are sometimes cryptid sightings or UFO sightings or both, that there's an overlapping of all these phenomenon and that they're actually part of one contiguous experience versus being disparate, which is the way that we traditionally think about it, right? That you're a ghost hunter, or you're a UFO hunter, or you're a cryptid hunter. In reality, you're a Fortean, or you're an anomalous hunter, right? That, it's all kind of connected in one way or another.
Okay, so I know that Alan was influenced by or interacted with Carl Jung, and I'm 67 years old, and since I was a teenager, I've been a follower and reader of Carl Jung, and I have a very, very expensive first edition of the Red Book, which I got cheap because I've had it forever. Okay, so the reason I bring that up is not only for you to discuss Carl Jung and what influence he had working with, or it just influenced Alan, is he was heavily involved with Wolfgang Pauli. Now, Wolfgang Pauli won the Nobel Prize for Physics in the quantum mechanical building era, and people don't understand that the solid material that's under their butt while they're sitting in a chair works because of the Pauli exclusion principle. And the electromagnetic forces that keep us held up and the Pauli exclusion principle are all about why materials are made out of atoms and so forth. And Jung worked with Pauli a lot while he was building his theories and thoughts about synchronicities. And Pauli had an amazing history. I can tell you one of the most amazing incidents with Wolfgang Pauli is there was an atom smasher, an accelerator at Princeton University. And Pauli was infamous for wrecking stuff. So this was a very expensive machine. He walked into the laboratory and the machine wrecked. He just walked into the room and the accelerator wrecked. And this was just these stories just become crazy about Pauli and Jung. So tell us what you can about the relationship or the influence that Carl Jung had on Alan.
I don't know too much about that, but I do know that the symbolism and synchronicity is very important to the work, right? That the synchronicities, they act as like guideposts. That and if you pay attention to them, I always tell people it's kind of silly, but I say the signs are there. You just have to see them, right? And sometimes the signs are stronger than others, but the synchronicities are a very powerful way that you kind of are able to chart a path, right? And the synchronicities will bring people into your life to help you with something, and then they'll go away. And through a series of synchronistic events, you learn things or you experience things. So the concept of the synchronicity is exceptionally powerful, but you have to pay attention. And I think that's the one thing where we fall apart, is in paying attention to the synchronicities around us. And that, Dave can tell you a story of what happened to Dave, with me and Alan, and where a series of synchronicities really took place, and they're strange and they shouldn't have happened, and there's no
Olav,
mechanical reason.
Let's go into detail for Bob about that.
Sure. So I went to a party, and I got a little tipsy, and I fell asleep, and I'm sleeping it off, and it was a fun party, and I was sleeping it off, and my phone starts ringing, and I'm not really paying attention to it. I'm trying to sleep, and so I think 2 times I turned it off. The third time, which is significant, by the way, but the third time I answered it, and Dave's on the other end. He's like, why did you call me? Why'd you call me? And I'm like, I didn't call you. I was fast asleep, basically passed out here in my hotel room. I didn't call you at all. And my phone had no record of the phone calls, but his did. Apparently, my phone called him 3 times at 3:33 in the morning, and it just descends from there. The 3:33 is important because in the free Illuminatist world, 93, well, 3 itself is a very powerful number, but 3 times 3 is 9, and there are 3 of them, so that's a 93. And as you know from Hellier, the number 93 is kind of like a marker of a group called the Secret Chiefs of the Third Order. And so we got on the phone discussing it, and there are some other things that are very reminiscent of Valus, or however you pronounce it, but Valus, that Dave experienced in those phone calls and subsequently. But we got on the phone. I got Greenfield on the phone. Dave got his remote viewer on the phone. And she starts saying, well, there's these 2 people, a man and a woman. And Greenfield's like, well, describe them. And so she starts describing the man. And he was able to ascertain that the man who was involved in this interaction was actually a French occultist from like the 1930s or 1920s or 1930s. I don't think we ever got to the woman, but the man was a well-known occultist, and he was able to figure that out based on the description that the woman was giving him. And so eventually we were able to establish communication with the secret chiefs through this intermediary. And the secret chiefs of the Third Order, the secret chiefs, they are like ascended beings in that worldview. They're ascended beings, ascended masters, and so they're benevolent and they try to help you. And then there's a group called the Black Lodges, like the inverse, that they're bad and you don't want to deal with them. But we had this series of synchronistic events happen in a very tight window that was very symbolic, and Jung was very good about the symbolism, not only the synchronicities, but this idea of that things have meanings, and when you see something, especially if it's out of place, there's a meaning that can be derived from what you're seeing, whether it's a number an object or a plant or an animal, that, everything has some sort of causal relationship.
Dave?
So that...
Yeah. It went with more symbolism, too, because actually Bob knows who the intermediary was, Megan Gehring.
Okay.
Yeah, I know Megan.
Yes, who for some reason has dropped off the face of the earth. I don't know where she went. However, but nonetheless, with everything that's gone on, it also included symbolism at that time with the diamond in the horns. So how does symbolism play into this, Olav?
Well, when you're doing magic, right, as a generic term, magic with a K, right? A lot of what you get is symbolic. They very rarely, if you ask a question, very rarely do you get back a very concrete answer. And I don't know why that is. I think it has to do with the abstraction of the secret chiefs, or whoever you use in your belief system. For me, it's the secret chiefs. I think it's the disconnection between where they are and where I am, or where the person is. So they don't think as a human does anymore, that they're elevated to a point where, the best way for them to communicate something to you is symbolically. I think it also has to do with the fact that, the joke that we make is that you're on the train. Once you get on the train, you can't get off. But, it's this idea, William Campbell discussed this in The Power of Myth, the hero's journey, right? That you're on this journey of discovery, and hopefully you'll end up with, knowledge or gnosis, where you have a more expansive view of the world and the universe. So if they just tell you it's too simple, you have to work for it. But yeah, like if you engage the secret cipher, generally what you get back is symbolic in nature. So if you ask it a question, you're going to get back, symbolic responses, and over time you kind of get the hang of it, how it's working. But in general, like what you get back is words that kind of lead you in a direction. You'll see a lot of positive words and not a lot of negative words. And it's like the balance of words that are innately positive versus negative, or you'll see words that represent things. And I know, if I say this, I'm going to get accused of cold reading here, but one of the things that I've seen many times, and I actually, as an experiment, I try to use it for doing readings like a tarot card, which is unrecommended. But I felt that I had enough of a grasp with it that I could try it. And I think I did about 30 or 40 of them. And in about 39 out of the 40, there was a specific combination of words that was very significant to the person that I was doing it for. Like I could derive a general meaning out of it, and nobody reported back to me that I was wrong. Everybody reported back to me that I got it, like that what I was telling them made a lot of sense, and it was what they were thinking or what they were leaning toward, or they didn't like it, but they could understand why. I mean, normal human responses, right? But in almost every case, if you looked at the results, there was some set of results because they come in lines. There were a couple lines in contiguous lines, like it would be, 61, 62, and 63. If you take those three lines as one sentence, that it made sense to them in a very, very specific way, that it wasn't like it generally made sense. It was something that somebody had said, or it was something that somebody wore, or it was like a nickname, or, something that was very representative of the question that they were asking. But it is symbolic in nature. It's not like you say, what day is it? It spits back, it's Wednesday today.
Right. Okay. So when the symbolism comes up and you're sitting there in dreamland or say having a daydream or a deja vu and all of a sudden you start seeing symbols in your mind or all around you, how does this trigger someone? How does it trigger a memory?
Well, I mean, that's getting into the human mind, right? The human mind itself is very symbolic. In various psychological, studies, right? That these symbols or manifestations that you see in your dreams are relevant to your subconscious trying. This is again Jung, right? That your subconscious is trying to communicate to you. In neurolinguistic programming, for example, the idea with neurolinguistic programming is to bypass the conscious mind and to get into the subconscious, because the subconscious, the rational mind is the reasoning system, but the subconscious has all the memories and the emotions and the feelings and the thoughts, and the dreams are all hidden in the subconscious. And when we're sleeping and we're in a sleep state or a relaxed state, meditation, sleeping, trancing, whatever you do, that you're able to access your subconscious mind and ferret out very detailed memories going very far back in your life. And your subconscious will communicate to you symbolically what it wants, because there's really, there's three parts of you in Jungian psychology, right? The id, the ego, and the superego. But conventionally we think of it in terms of the conscious and subconscious mind. That the conscious mind is rationalizing and interpolating data. It's something like the human mind has to process something like 6 million inputs per minute, I think it was. And so your conscious mind is sorting through that, but your subconscious mind is really the storage area for that, and where the thoughts actually originate, and the conscious mind rationalizes them. That's why we say we're rationalizing things, because the subconscious mind will push up thoughts and feelings, and then the conscious mind is trying to interpolate it to make sense of it. Kind of like it on a computer system. It's kind of like, you're going from, cold storage, or, going from the hard drive, and then you're sucking the process up into memory to hang there while the processor, acts on the application while it's in memory. All the good stuff's on the hard drive, but it's slow and it spins up slowly, so you have to put it in a RAM, which is faster.
Interesting, Bob.
Okay,
so 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
We got about 2 minutes. 2 minutes left,
Okay.
maybe 3, before we go to break. So tell us a little bit about current projects you and Alan are working on together in the next couple of minutes.
Sure. Sorry, I have a bit of a frog in my throat. Right now, we're researching and looking toward writing a book when he's feeling better. Both of us on occult ciphers. I've been working with him on the cipher that I was able to crack. I cracked a new and exciting cipher. And we've been trying to get some of his older books, like the Grail Within, out back into the world. That he has a bunch of books that he wrote back in the 70s that were privately published or only limited run. And so, we're trying to kind of get those back out there, because people are very interested in his view of magic and how he interprets stuff. So the latest one is the Grail Within, which is about sex magic. So we're constantly, it's interesting. It's a good book. It's fascinating, but we're looking at some of his older writings and trying to get them back out into circulation, because the time is right, I think.
Yeah, I noticed that Alan has either these are old interviews or Alan has done recent interviews, and they're on a podcast on owltale.com. Are those recent?
I don't know about those specifically, but generally, Alan does quite a lot of podcasts talking about, magic and Enochian magic and free illuminism and, his experiences in UFOs. So he does a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, this is really extensive. This is 13 hour and a half to 2 hour long podcasts. I encourage people to go to owltail.com and look for Alan Greenfield. It looks like it's a bunch of interesting topics.
Gentlemen, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break at the top of the hour. 1 hour down, Science Bob and Friends with special guest Olav Phillips continues right after this on Spaced Out Radio. All right, guys, I'm just going to run out for a quick break, and I'll be right back, okay?
Yeah, me too, but that's the way to burn an hour in a hurry.
Yeah, no shit.
I'll be right back. Sorry you got a cold there, Olaf.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's actually allergies.
Ah. Yeah, I defeated my allergies with a combination of Claritin and Flonase spray. I finally defeated them.
Yeah, the Flonase is great. I hope I'm answering your questions well enough.
You're doing great. Look, okay. Our job is to explore,
sure.
And to try to make logical connections with other things and bring all these the influences in. Just kind of explain the kind of deal, and for me to learn.
Well, I've never, it's odd. I'm going to actually go back to Alan and talk to him about Jung because we talk about symbolism a lot, of course, but I never asked him about Jung.
I think Alan was influenced by Jung, or they actually knew each other, and I'm not sure which.
Well, certainly ask him.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talk about a wide variety of things. So
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, we'll get on the phone for a couple hours when he's feeling better.
How's the weather, Dave?
It's a little chilly. It's a little chilly.
Is it a little chilly, Dave?
It is a little chilly.
But yeah, the symbolism thing is very interesting because it I have my own theories about why that is. I kind of gave you some of it, but it's everything that manifests when you do these things. It's all symbolic, and you really do have to watch. I mean, the balloons are crazy. I mean, I can tell you stories about balloons. They're nuts, but they do represent things that when I see a balloon, it means either something just completed or something is about to start.
Wow.
Yeah, I told Alan once, the guys on the YouTube feed will get a kick out of this. I told Alan once, I said, Alan, teach me everything, right? And Alan says, I don't have to. I said, what do you mean? I want to know everything that you know. Tell me now, right? And Alan says, I don't have to. You learn by balloon.
All right, boys, we have about 45 seconds left. I want to say a big thank you to both Sig Sauer and Wagon Breath for the amazing super chats. It's a great way to support this show here. Thank you so much for your awesome support. Another way to support this show is give us a thumbs up. If you're new, hit that subscribe button. Very important that we try and hit that 10,000 or 15,000 subscribers by May 24th. We're just under 11,000 right now. We're about 107 away from 11,000. So we're moving on up. We are trending right where we need to be. Hi, Cherie. How are you? Hey, Spudger. How you doing, buddy? And Off-World Adam, good to see you. Here we go, guys, with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears. We want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free for you by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. It's Nudic. It's Nudic is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on with Science Bob and friends. Dr. Bob McGwier is here with our special guest, Olav Phillips. We are talking Cyphers, the secret cipher of the UFO knots, symbology, occultism, and so much more. Science Bob, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well.
You having fun tonight?
Oh yeah, it's great fun. Olaf and Alan have piqued my curiosity, so I'm full of questions.
Go ahead, buddy.
All right, so Olaf, let's cut a little closer to the bone here now. Tell us in words that we're in first grade. Well, what is the secret cipher, and how did it come to be? And let's move on toward some simple uses.
Sure. Well, at its most root, the secret cipher is a code that's embedded within the Book of Law. It was written by Aleister Crowley, but it was at the turn of the century, but it was dictated to him by an ultra-terrestrial entity. In the 70s, a guy named Jim Lees figured out the cipher and cracked it. And basically what it is that when you use the cipher, you're inherently performing a magical task. The activation of the cipher creates a sigil, like a symbol, and then that symbol creates a connection to the ether where ultra-terrestrial entities can communicate back the answer to your question. So really, the use of the secret cipher I've found over time is really a personal thing. Different people use it in different ways. It doesn't work really well if you put in like names. So I try to caution people, and Alan, we'll tell you point blank, don't put in a name. Theoretically, if you put in a name, you should get back symbolistic responses that correspond to that person. But it's not like a tarot card is what I'm getting at, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like tarot cards. But you can ask it questions. It functions best. You can put in names, of course. I mean, that's how he discovered the link between these, names of these aliens from the contactee era and, some very interesting results around religion and other things. So names do work. Don't get me wrong. It's not, don't put in names. It's more like, don't use it like a tarot card. But you put in information into it, and then you get back is symbolistic responses. And then those symbolistic responses can be used to derive a meaning for the words that you put in, basically.
Okay.
It answers your question. It answers your question. You put in a question and it answers it symbolically. I should also mention that the way it functions best is that if you have an intention of the question, and then you put in keywords related to what you're intending, and then you get back an answer in symbolism.
Okay. All right. So I am certain that there are many more interesting stories besides Hellier. Why don't you pick one of your favorite cipher stories that relates to either Alan's or your use of it, so that we can give another illustrative example to our audience?
Well, sure. I mean, my go-to story for it, right, is my friend who died. I have a friend. I kind of told this one early on, but my friend died. My friend from high school died. His sister was very upset and wanted to talk to him, and so we were debating various ways to do it. Whether we want to, how she felt most comfortable trying. Right? Do you want to use a spirit box in SB7? I don't do Ouija boards, no Ouija boards, but, you want to use a pendulum, you want to try for EVP. I mean, what makes sense to you? And so she's thinking about it, and she's very upset. And one day she gets this photo just appears on her phone. And, photos don't just appear on your phone, right? That they, sometimes Apple, if you have an iPhone, will push down a song. There was a whole controversy with U2 pushing down this album, but you don't get like a photo, and this photo mysteriously appears on her phone. So we're talking about it, and I'm like, okay, I'm looking at the photo. Is there something about the photo? Like, is it where it's at? Because everything has a meaning, right? So is it the room that it's in? Is it something in the distance? Whatever. And really just could not figure out anything. I mean, and so she used an app, and I said, well, let's figure out what the name of this thing is. And she used an app and figured out the name of the flower, the name of the plant. And so I fed the name of the plant into the secret cipher. And because we have a web-based version, we have an iPhone version, and we try to make it easy for people to get to it, because actually, like, drawing the symbols and other things, it gets very complicated. So we have a website where you can run them, or, there's an iPhone app where you can just download it and type it in. But I typed it in, and my intention, I put in the name of the flower. My intention is the individual's name. Did you put this on her phone? Like, in my head, I'm thinking, did you put this on her phone? And then I typed in the name. And so I get back, I think, 170 lines, right? And so I'm going through the lines, trying to figure it out and, kind of get the gist of it, get the feel of it, right? And I come across the line and it said something to the effect of, yes, I put it there. It was literally like the line said, yes, I put it there. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm going down further, and it said something like, tell them I love them. And so I took a screenshot of this and I sent it to her, and it was obvious that what had come back to me by using the name of the plant, the answer that I got back of, did you put it there, was yes, I put it there. And then, there was a bit of a line, the lines above it was kind of, the implication was, you need to give her a message, and it said, I love you. Which, if you think about it mathematically, I mean, that's a pretty strange thing to have happen, that you put in a random, you're thinking in your mind, did you put this on there? And then buried within the results, you get back basically, yes, I did. And then tell her I love her. That doesn't seem to make a lot of rational sense, but that's a kind of an example of where the secret cipher came in, that I was trying to get an answer of, did you put it there? And it told me yes.
Very interesting. Okay. So, I've often been curious about a group that Alan was associated with, and I don't know that much about it other than what I read that Alan wrote. Tell us about the Order of the Temple of the East, or Ordo Templi Orientis. What is it? What was Alan's role in it?
So, Alan is no longer affiliated with the OTO.
I knew that.
Yeah, he's a bit outspoken on the OTO. He was very active in his lodge in the OTO. He was a very high level OTO member. He was part of the kind of corporate part of the OTO that kind of runs the day-to-day operations of the OTO, the main office. So he held a very high position within the OTO. Basically, the OTO, there's kind of two dominant groups that came out of Thelema and the Crowley writings. Is that you've got the OTO, Ordo Templis Orientis, you've got the Golden Dawn. They kind of came out of Crowley's work, and the OTO is more of like the doers, that they do stuff. Like they are ritual magicians. They have lodges. They perform rituals. It's very hierarchical in nature. There's a series of degrees that you go through, where in each degree you gain more, magical knowledge. The Golden Dawn, for me, the Golden Dawn, I see it as more of the research, and they read and they document and they write and they theorize, and it's more of like more on the research spectrum. So you need both. If you're into Thelema, you kind of need both, right? That you need the research arm and you need the kind of ritual magician arm, both. And there's a million and one splinter groups off of the OTO or splinter groups based on Thelema, but the OTO and the Golden Dawn are kind of the dominant two groups. And the OTOs organized in lodges. I believe the one Alan was in was called the Euless Lodge, and they would meet and they would perform ritual magic. But now, after leaving the OTO, he is about what he calls free illuminism, and free illuminism is kind of the same kind of magic, right? And these same kind of teachings and the same kind of processes, but it's non-hierarchical in nature, and it's more open and inclusive. And so in free illuminism, it's really driven by the individual lodge, that it's very independent.
Yes.
But
yeah.
But you don't have.
I was just going to point out that I knew he had separated from them, And
Yeah.
you can tell the depth of his feeling by the several thousand-word statement he has on his website about
That's
leaving
correct.
the OTO. But I just knew it was a big part of his life, and I
He
wondered
was in it for a long time.
wondered what the organization was. And you've done well. These things always they're always political, because if you get
Yes.
three people together, there's politics.
Yeah, and for example, when you talk about free illuminism, right, that I have a lodge myself, the Celestial Lodge of Sirius, and I am chartered by Alan and his lodge. Alan has a lodge, and Alan chartered my lodge. So, I'm kind of a splinter of Alan's lodge, endorsed by Alan.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, he seems to be a free spirit, and I certainly understand that when a group gets large and heavily structured and constraining, and you're a free thinker and want to do as much exploration, and maybe you could even be classified as an eclectic, it wouldn't work forever.
Right.
So that makes sense. Dave,
Yeah,
why don't you take? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Olav.
Well, yeah, and if you look at his books, right, the books that he's written, you have the complete Cipher of the UFO knots, but you also have the True History of Witchcraft, which is it's just a treatise on the evolution of witchcraft through the ages, right? And then, you have the Grail Within, which is more about, this on the sex magic spectrum. And then, he's contributed articles to Tim Beckley's books about Enochian magic, and he's written on all these different topics. So yeah, he very much is a free spirit, and he wants very eclectic. So he's always, I recently got him a God helmet, so he's waiting until he feels better, and then he's going to try the God helmet. He's always trying to push. Yeah, he's always trying to push his knowledge. Yeah.
I particularly enjoyed the book God Never Does the Same Thing Twice. I didn't get an early one, but I got the revised and expanded edition. Tell us as much as you care to about God Never Does the Same Thing Twice, because I really like the book.
Well, I'm actually in the process of republishing it. It was kind of Alan's take on the world. I guess is probably the best way to describe it, that it's allegory, and it's based on various historical events and kind of how those all fit together, and how it affects things, and, how you see the world. And the title actually comes from a quote from an ancient rabbi about, God never does the same thing twice. But it's a very interesting book. It's very different than the other books that he's written. And I think,
it seems to be a treatment of messiahs, prophets, and those kinds of people,
and
how they impact the world.
Yeah, I would say it's a treatment on religion. That in all its different components. And I think it's a fascinating book, but I think that sometimes, people have read, the complete Cipher of the UFO knots, or the Grail Within, or the True History of Witchcraft, or all the other books he's wrote, and they go into that one, and it's written so differently that they kind of don't know what to make out of it. But what it really is it's a treatise on religion and how people perceive things, and what these people in positions of power do, and it's very interesting.
It is. Dave, take a turn.
I got a question from Brett in the chat room. He is asking about Carl Jung's theory of UFOs. Manly P. Hall does a great lecture on it. What do you think about the theory of UFOs, Olav?
The theory of UFOs is that them being archetypes.
Yes. That's Carl Jung's
right.
View of it.
Yeah, I think for me personally, especially after working with Greenfield as long as I have, I think for me really, I tend to I tend to see everything in the realm of the ultra-terrestrial. So I see the UFO as one archetype, and the cryptid as an archetype, and their manifestation has a certain symbolism, right? Which the archetype has a symbolism, right? And so when I've seen UFOs, sure. When I see a UFO, and trust me, I know the difference between an airplane, even an exotic airplane, and a UFO. I chase exotic aircraft. So when I see a UFO, early on, I would think to myself, oh my goodness, this is an alien, and oh wow, and whatever. Now, at this point in my maturation, I look at the UFO and I'm looking at the time of day where I'm at. I'm looking for the symbolism associated with the act of seeing it. That is the act of seeing it simply they wanted to let me know they're there, or is the act of me seeing it representative of a synchronicity that's coming or a synchronicity that's active? I'm looking, I'm a human being. I don't walk down the street and look for symbolism everywhere. I mean, it's everywhere, but I don't do that. But if I have a major event like seeing a UFO, I see it as an archetypal construct of, okay, there's a meaning attached to this. So I'm trying to derive the meaning attached from it. But that's just me personally.
Yeah, so one of the major cognitive scientists that are going around now is Hoffman, and he has this game theoretic, evolutionary game theoretic proof that species that perceive actual reality are severely disadvantaged to those that live in an illusion. And I think Jung was very much of that opinion, and he just saw symbolism, archaic symbols, images popping out of the collective unconscious and entering your consciousness, and it was the illusion we live in. That was Carl Jung's kind of entire premise. I'm simplifying it too much, but he really was about that.
Yeah, I mean, this also ties into simulation theory, right?
Yes.
Is that, the modern manifestation of that theory is simulation theory, that we're living in a simulation, and when you see these things, they're indicative of something else, that they are put into the simulation for some reason, whether it's to elicit an emotional response or to clue you into something or whatever. But yeah, I'm fairly familiar with game theory, and I think that if you live in a strict reality-based world, you are at disadvantage because you have to. Everything is what you see is what you get. That there's no meaning beyond that. That if you live in this illusionary state that you're talking about, it allows you to delve further toward maybe the underlying construct.
Yep. Hoffman's work is very, very interesting. Also, there's a new field theory for consciousness, which interacts with electromagnetic field. And so our consciousness under this theory is not contained inside our body. It's actually quite extensive.
Well, Kroeber, who is, seen as one of the great American anthropologists, he did a Yishi the Last Yahi, right? Kroeber Hall in Berkeley. Kroeber had a theory called the superorganic, that human culture and society were actually stored in an amorphous cloud above us, and that we kind of, for lack of a better term, downloaded, culture and society, those societal constraints as manifested through the collective consciousness. We made decisions about taboos and culture, and that those were communicated to us by the superorganic but superorganic thing that was pushing culture down inside of us. And he wrote about that very early on. But, that for me personally, it has a lot of different names. Some people call it the Akashic Record or whatever. But I actually had a very interesting dream once where it went on for a week. And this kind of defies dream interpretation, right? That this idea that dreams are random misfirings or random firings, of synapses and random neuron activation inside your brain, right? That just trigger weird memories. I had the same dream for a week straight, and every time I closed my eyes, I would go right back into the dream, and it was consistent. And so when I would go back, fall asleep again, I would go right back into the dream where I had ended when I woke up. And I don't usually remember dreams, but I remember this one very clearly.
Olav, we're going to get you to hold on right there because we do got to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Olav Phillips, special guest, joining Science Bob, Dr. Bob McGwier, here on Science Bob and Friends. We continue talking about symbolism, UFOs, and more on Spaced Out Radio, Science Bob and Friends. All right, gents, we're clear.
Okay, Olav, when we come back, we'll let you kind of restart the dream story and finish
Sure.
No problem. That's interesting.
It's a weird one.
No, I want to hear that whole story, and I'm sure our audience does too.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, this is going by as fast as any show we've done.
Oh, yeah. Why all of a sudden am I getting an echo here? Oh, there, it's gone now.
That's good.
Olav, do you care to explain your plaid for tonight?
Which plaid am I wearing? I'm wearing Carhartt. It's kind of a red and it has some white in it.
Nice. Well, At this time of the night, I usually bring out my Mighty Moose beard oil from Gary the Dutchman at MightyMooseBeard.com. And I'm using the True North blend tonight. This is the new one. It smells very, very foresty. Makes me feel like I want to go cut some wood out in the forest, fire up my chainsaw, wear some plaid, and use the word A all the time, because that's what Canadians do. Show you how it works. Just get a little squeeze, throw it into the old hand there, rub it together, move your headphones, and then just massage it in. See, Science Bob can't do this anymore because he decided to shave his beard. He had a lovely beard going on, decided to shave it. If he would have held on to some Mighty Moose beard oil, incident would have never happened. But, and ladies, just so you know, you can use this in your hair as well. It helps moisturize your hair, puts natural oils in it, helps with split ends. Look how beautiful my hair is, ladies. Look how beautiful. Bob's just staring at this saying, my God, Dave, your hair is gorgeous. Your hair is fucking gorgeous. And it's all because of MightyMooseBeard.com and Mighty Moose Beard Oil. Tell Gary the Dutchman that you're going to use promo code SOR2019 to get a discount. Remember, you'll never meet another Dutchman who will give you a break like Gary the Dutchman at MightyMooseBeard.com. So go check it out today. There you go. Oh, my beard feels great.
Dave, I got my Mighty Moose beard oil.
You did? Tell us, what do you think about it?
I love it.
I
got the original flavor.
Yeah.
I love it. It's really good.
It is fantastic. It is fantastic. I told you would. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I really like it. And he gave me a little sampler one, too.
Oh, nice. Nice. That's Gary the Dutchman right there. Gary the Dutchman.
No, I'm sold. I'm tossing the other stuff. I like this one much more. It's not as it's easier to rub into the beard, and it hydrates the beard better.
It does.
It makes the beard softer.
It does,
and
totally.
less sensitive. It does, and it's not as gross oily.
I know.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, very good.
You should make. There's some guys make a balm. You should make that.
Well, he's got a wax. I haven't figured out how to use the wax yet.
Oh, wax is tricky.
Yeah, I haven't figured out how to use the wax yet. I need lessons.
But I love that stuff.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And just out of curiosity, American money, what did it cost you?
Oh, I forget. It's I think it's like $29 or something.
For the
Canadian,
whole thing,
right?
shipping and everything, yeah.
Yeah, I think it worked out to like 24.
Yeah,
or
that's
something.
that's
like,
pretty cheap. That's pretty cheap.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I'm in. I'm buying it. I'm buying more.
All right, we've got 1 minute. We've got 1 minute to go here before we make things going. Hi, Jenster on Spreaker. Notice that I'm talking to you, Jenster on Spreaker. Yes, I'm talking to you, Jenster on Spreaker. Yes. She's like, so no commercials on Spreaker like before. We get to hear the YouTube stuff. Cool. Hear
about beard oil.
And hear about beard oil, which is still good for women's hair. Helps eliminate split ends. Let's remember that. Thank you to Sig Sauer and Wagon Breath for the amazing super chats tonight. Really do appreciate the love and support. Thank you to everyone who's given us a thumbs up and thumbs down so far. If you're looking for T-shirt swag, go to facebook.com/the SOR Vault. Here we go, everyone, with the second half of the show kicking off right now. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on with Science Bob and Friends. Dr. Bob McGwier is here as he comes in the second week of every month to discuss less woo, more who, what, where, when, why, and how. And tonight we're talking symbolism, symbology, ciphers, occult, and more with Olav Phillips. Guys, welcome back.
Oh, thank you. So, Olav, you were beginning to tell us the story of your a recurring dream. So just start it again and let's go through it.
Okay. So I had this dream that lasted for about a week. Well, actually it lasted for a week. And every time my eyes closed, I fell asleep and I went into a sleep state. I went right back in the dream, and the dream would begin where it had ended. And basically, I was walking through a library that it was immense. Like the aisles of the library were so far that I couldn't see the end. And the only way I can describe it, it was kind of like the British Museum Library, right? Except not circular. That it was like, well, I don't really know what it was because I couldn't see the end, but there were rows versus the British Museum Library where it's more circular. Well, but it was high and it was immense, and we were walking down the main aisle and looking down these aisles, and I was being led by a woman in a gray cloak. And every so often she would stop and point at an aisle and tell me what was in the aisle. And every so often we would walk past like a table, and there would be people at the table like doing research, discussing things, whatever. And this goes on and on and on. And I'm just keep walking through this library. And then I was hanging out with my friend, and while, we went out UFO hunting, and we came back and I went back to my room and I fell asleep, and I went right back into the dream. And it had been probably a week since I had that dream. When I fell asleep that night after not seeing any UFOs or Area 51 stuff, when I fell asleep, I had that dream again, only this time she was in the dream. And it turns out that when I talked to her later, much later, she told me that when she had fallen asleep, that she had the same dream and that I was in it. And we were walking down through this library led by a woman in a gray cloak. And, you know, for me, right, in my worldview, the woman in the gray cloak represented Heniel, which is one of the archangels. And Heniel, you know, has a specific meaning, you know, Venus, or she is the archangel of love and creativity and knowledge, and the seventh heaven where Eden was supposed to be. And, you know, so, but this is the archangel that in my world that I'm tied to is Heniel. And so, you know, yeah, when I tried to think about that dream, you know, the thing I thought of was this notion of the superorganic, or the Akashic record, or, you know, this kind of like amorphous cloud that exists beyond us that we're kind of tapping into. This coincides with Philip K. Dick's experience with Bayless, and, you know, downloading information into his brain, uploading information back in. He was more conscious of the transmission of data than the normal person, but I think, you know, it kind of showed, I think it was kind of supposed to be demonstrative that all of us are tied into this thing at some level or another, and that this library was the way that I could rationalize what I was seeing, and it was effectively the storehouse of all knowledge. And that if I wanted knowledge, when I'm seeking knowledge, that I'm actually tying into this place, for the Akashic record, for lack of a better term, but I'm tying into this place to access this knowledge when I'm doing like a waking trance, or the Gansfeld, or you use something like a God helmet, you know, or whatever, which are actually, or the secret cipher, you're actually tying into this Akashic record and extracting data out of it, kind of like using a computer terminal to access, you know, a larger data set somewhere else, like a big database. You're running queries against it.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So yeah, the Akashic record was like this massive library of universal experiences, and in your
Right.
dream, you were able just to go in and do your thing in there. That was really interesting. That must have been wild.
Yeah. It was wild, and it literally came back every time I closed my eyes. Like if I took a nap, boom, I was back. If I fell asleep watching Forged in Fire, I'm a fan. If I fell asleep watching Forged in Fire, bam, I'm back. You know, every time I fell asleep, I was in.
Dave, why don't you take a shot? Surely we've got some questions from our listeners.
They're sitting back right now listening and talking beard oil right now, just so you know. But
Okay.
but Olav, for you, I do have a question from Nicole, who is asking whether or not either of you are part of or part of the Freemasons.
I am not.
No. My family, I have had members of my family in the Freemasons who were in Masonic lodges, but I am not a Mason myself. No.
My grandfather was, but my father was not, and I'm not.
My dad was, and my great grandfather.
I know nobody. Nobody in my family ever does anything interesting.
Well, I went to Rosslyn. I took my father to Rosslyn, and when he went inside the church at Rosslyn, he flipped out, because the Masonic symbolism inside that church, I mean, it's everywhere. It literally covers every surface of that church.
Wow. I haven't been in there. Of course, yeah, I lived in Virginia for the 11 years before last summer, and I moved back home to Alabama. Let's change gears a little bit. I'm sorry. Please continue.
Oh, I was going to say, this is the one that's in Scotland, outside of Edinburgh.
Ah, okay, got it.
Great
Not Rosslyn.
haggis. the pub there, great haggis, fantastic. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. Alan got really interested in Men in Black, hanging around with Gray Barker, who also wrote about Men in Black. What drew him to it?
Well, I think. I mean, I'm speaking for myself. My interpretation of what he's told me. I think it was the fact that they kept popping up, and what did they represent? Because when you talk about like the Mothman, and when you especially early on, not so much anymore, but especially early on in the UFO research field, that these guys would keep showing up, and I think it was really why, who are they, and what are they doing? That what do they represent, and why are they here? And I think the mystery of it was very interesting to him, and how they tied into the ultra-terrestrials. Right.
So he obviously found a patterns
mm-hmm.
And other symbology or something, because he wrote a book entitled The Secret Rituals. Tell us a little bit about what he found.
Well, sorry, I'm coughing again. Well, I think a lot of it was about the timing, because in the occult world and in magic, time is a very important thing. Dates, times, what time is it? What's the date, the location? And I think he started to derive patterns of these sightings and how long before the Men in Black would show up. And, really, to get the full gist of it, you really have to read that part of the complete Secret Cipher. But I think really he started to try to map where they were showing up and what they were doing, and finding patterns in what they were doing. When if you're of that mindset, right? And I speak from experience. If you're of that mindset, that when you start to see, say, the Men in Black showing up, and back then they were showing up a lot. I mean, Tim Beckley actually took a photo of one. It's what's on the cover, and they're showing up everywhere. And so if you take, from that world view, you start to like plot it out on a map. You say, okay, where are they showing up? And I'm seeing, okay, they're here and they're here and they're here. And you're starting to connect the dots to try to see if there's a pattern to the locations, or if there's patterns about the time of day, or the patterns of the time of year, or the day of the month, or the day of the week, and because it all means something. So I think that's really what he started to discover, was patterns in the way that they moved and what information they were after. And he started to derive a kind of structural view of the Men in Black, and how they kind of correlated to the Mothman, and correlated to UFOs, and correlated to these 14 events. Because, earlier on in the conversation, you were talking about Keel, and Keel was not the first. The first was Charles Fort. That's why, I identify as a Fortian, because Fort applied the same kind of logic to all kinds of anomalous events, whether it was, frogs falling from the sky. And, there's conventional scientific explanations why, fish are falling from the sky, that, somewhere out in the ocean. You have a hurricane developing. The hurricane is sucking the water up into the hurricane. The fish are going with it. And as they rotate through the hurricane, they come out the top, and there's kind of an ejection field that occurs. And because especially, scientists believe this, because a lot of times when you have like fish falls, that the fish are frozen because they're chucked up into the atmosphere and flash frozen, or they're flash frozen and then defrost on the way down, so they survive it, and they're flopping around and they're ejected hundreds of miles inland. But Fort was obsessed with this notion that there are all these weird events taking place, and trying to make sense of it and the patterns of it. So if you have a Fortean worldview, that you're going to start to look for patterns and try to understand the larger construct, because what it turns out as is that, a Bigfoot sighting or a chupacabra sighting or a Mothman sighting, usually there's a UFO flap that occurs about the same time. So, okay, I've got a UFO, I've got a cryptid. Now the area where I'm seeing it, I've got ghosts. Is there a lot of crystalline material like quartz in the ground? Is it limestone? You start to go through a lot of things because you're trying to see the bigger picture.
Yep, and I remind our listeners that all of those kinds of considerations, looking at the geography and the topography and so forth, was a constant theme in Hellier, where maybe many of our listeners were introduced to kind of looking at all those aspects of these interesting sightings, and where many of our listeners, I'm sure, learned of all these Fortean influences on these people's opinions and approaches. And of course, having both Alan and Johnny L. Tenney as their Fortean experts, if you would, surely sets the frame of mind and the approach to their study and applying the cipher and what they take from it. You can clearly see all the way back from Fort forward, lots of influence, and you can see it on what I think many people feel is the number one thinker inside of ufology today is Jacques Vallée, and of course he wrote Passports to Magonia, which is as Fortean as you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Hellier, one of the things that always perplexed me about Hellier was why Hellier? Why Hellier? What's so special about Hellier? And it turns out that if you look at the geology of Hellier, the area, you have a number of fault lines. There's a fault line that runs right next to Hellier, and it's very close to the entrance to the cave, the tunnel that they do a lot of work in. And there's this connection to Point Pleasant, which is not far away.
Yep.
And there's a scene. It dates back to the Ice Age, but number one, that whole area is like embedded with crystalline material, but there's actually a seam of I forget what it's called, but it's like a diluvial seam that runs from approximately where that tunnel is all the way into Point Pleasant.
Yep.
And so, it's this idea that there's a resonance to the crystals, and that, if you go to a place that's very crystal heavy, that you have more manifestations of 14 events. And that whole area is just littered with billions and billions of microscopic crystals. So there's kind of a connection there. But again, the geology of that area actually plays into, I think, why they had so much stuff happen in that vicinity.
Yep. Dave, do you have another question from our listeners?
Yeah, a lot of people who have heard Alan speak and you speak and others surrounding him, the talk is always ultra-terrestrials, Olav. Okay.
Right.
Are they the ones who are reading these symbols or sending these symbols that people are downloading? Or is it some sort of just mystical mystery that Mother Earth provides?
So the ultra-terrestrial archetype, you don't really know, speaking for myself, you don't really know what the ultra-terrestrial is. Is it an alien? Is it interdimensional? I personally tend to kind of slide toward the interdimensional end of it. Because, your esteemed colleague on the phone, he can tell you how many dimensions that they've mathematically postulated, but it's a lot. At this point, they've gotten, up in very quantifiably got up in the, 5 or 6 dimensions, but there
it's 11.
are hundreds.
It's 11.
Oh, 11. And 11 is actually...
You need 11 to make string theory work.
Okay, well, and 11 is actually a very interesting number because 11 is the number of magic. You see, there's an example of the synchronicity. You need 11 dimensions for string theory to work, but magically, 11 is the number of magic. You see the synchronicity, right? But, I tend to kind of go toward the interdimensional nature of these entities. But they could be aliens, it could be anything. The idea is to try to figure out what they are. As far as the symbols and other things, you know, you might think of the ultra-terrestrials as a delivery agent. You might think of them in terms of like being UPS dropping off a package, right? That they're here for some reason, and we're trying to figure out. All of us are trying to figure out why they're here. But at the end of the day, they're either curious or they're delivering a message. But the message itself, you know, this is where the secret chiefs come in. Or, you know, I tend to see the secret chiefs as one element, but there's this notion of the universe, right? That there's this cosmic kind of consciousness that is actually creating the message, and it's actually creating the symbols, and the ultra-terrestrials are more of the delivery mechanism for the symbol versus being the originator. And, you know, this plays into the notion of manifestations or tulpas, which are thought forms and other things, that we're harnessing this power that's intrinsic to the universe. And the secret chiefs are kind of like the translators for us, because at one point they were human, but through gnosis or knowledge that they transcended, you know, conventional humanist existence and evolved into a more enlightened being.
What's the relation to machine elves?
To what? Oh, machine elves?
Yeah.
What is it called? I'm drawing a blank now, but there's a term for it that we use. You know, the glitches, the random failures, I think is what you're after, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, you know, and that's hard to explain for somebody who's not delved in the world of computers and programming. But there's the chaos monkey. That's what I was thinking of. We call it the chaos monkey. And actually, Netflix actually has a piece of software they call the chaos monkey that goes through the Netflix system and will randomly fail things to make sure that it's still redundant. But the machine elves of the chaos monkey, you know, it's a manifestation of random events that causes random failures throughout your infrastructure. And there's no rhyme or reason to why they appear. You know, I've always attributed that to entropy, that it's just a manifestation of entropy. That, you know, if you have everything working exactly right and you have everything dialed in, it's just this kind of decay that manifests randomly that will cause something to fail when it shouldn't.
Sure.
But I think that's a manifestation of uncertain. You know, this is the uncertainty model, right? That, you know, random events will take place at random times in random locations and do random things. And in a distributed network of high-speed computing systems, that you'll see random events take place, not routinely, but they do happen, and you'll see these random events take place and cause things to fail when they shouldn't. And I actually had a bot.
You know it's random because they use terms such as mean time to failure to describe what they believe is the rate at which they're going to have to fix stuff.
Yeah, and they fail for inexplicable reasons. I had a boss, because I do IT stuff. I had a boss, and in every one of our data centers, he was German, and he was originally from Germany, and we would put a Glückenschwein, a lucky pig, into all of our data centers to try to appease the IT god to not send the chaos monkey to screw our stuff up. So in every one of our data centers, you know, there was a little pig magnet that was a lucky pig to try to avoid the chaos monkey. But it's real, and it's probably, you know, for somebody who's not doing quantum, you know, quantum mathematics and heavy mathematics, seeing these random failures occur, you don't usually see them in things like cars, or, your house or whatever, but in high speed and large scale, computational clusters and, distributed networks, you absolutely do see these things on a not a routine basis, but you do see these strange random failures occur.
Yeah, you have a lot more things right down on the subatomic and the quantum inside of computers, because quantum electronics is how they work.
Right.
And of course, machines are big pieces of metal. Dave?
We're going to step out for a break here, gentlemen. Science Bob, Dr. Bob McGwier, Olav Phillips. We have these guys for another 30 minutes on Spaced Out Radio. Hour 3 of the big show coming up next. All right, gents, you guys talk away. I'm going to run my dogs out. I'll be right back.
I'm really enjoying this conversation.
Hang on one second. Sorry, I didn't expect that question.
Oh yeah, I like to bounce around.
No, it's fine. I'm a principal DevOps engineer, so I've seen it many times. I was just trying to, for me and guys like me, it's the cost of doing business, so we just know it'll happen. But I was trying to figure out how to explain it to somebody who doesn't do IT stuff.
Well, yeah, and I took my first quantum mechanics course in 1976, and my last one in 1981 when I took quantum field theory from Leon Cooper. And you just learn that this stuff happens at random. And you can have particles inside your machine that are entangled with particles halfway across the universe, and something happens to it, and all of a sudden you've got a failure, or a cosmic ray from some black hole enters and clobbers a particular spot and flips a transistor. It just happens.
My grandfather was a mathematician, and he worked for Martin Marietta.
Oh yeah, sure.
And he worked in the Missiles and Space Division, and they built, missiles. He was a missileer in the Air Force, amongst other things.
Mm-hmm.
But he found God in the numbers, and I once had this very bizarre conversation with him, where I studied anthropology, so I'm very much an evolutionary person, and he was very religious. He was a ordained minister in the Anglican Church, as well as having he had a master's degree in mathematics, and his PhD dissertation actually got classified. The data got classified, so he couldn't complete it. So he kind of got screwed out of the PhD. So he got a doctorate in divinity instead. But I had this bizarre conversation with him, and I took him down the rabbit hole. And I got to the soup notion that we came out of the soup, and I got it all the way to the comet strikes and having the amino acids and all that crap, and then we got all the way through to the Big Bang. And he when we got to the Big Bang, he said, "Well, what caused the explosion?" And I said, "Well, at that time I'm an ignorant child, but I said, well, that's the vacuum theory, right? That if you have a pure vacuum, a positive and negative particle will spontaneously appear. and eventually mathematically they'll collide. And when they collide, you don't know. It's indeterminate whether they'll cancel each other out or whether the collision will cause an explosion. You really don't know. And I said, mathematically, eventually they're going to collide and blow up. And, some people think that's the origin of the Big Bang is the vacuum theory. And his answer was really artfully simple. He said, well, I'm a mathematician. And I said, right. And he said, I know the vacuum theory. And I said, right. He says, the question that I ask myself is that the math is there. The math shows you that these things will happen spontaneously, that there's no rhyme or reason. They just occur. And he said, but my question to you is that looking beyond that, the math, that there is order there. And he said, to me, that order is God. That the only explanation as a mathematician that I can give you that rationalizes the math, that proves something like the vacuum theory, is that God put it there. That was his explanation. And he would take it all the way to the end. That when he got to that point in his own mind, that's where he found God. And he found God in the math, because he said the math, that on a grand scale for him, that the math was too ordered and structured. That he said that it shouldn't have been as ordered and structured as what he saw.
Gentlemen, we have just under 1 minute here.
Okay.
I've had other people tell me the same thing. I know a guy who's got a PhD in atmospheric science, and he's quite the mathematician. And he says that there's a structure there. He's a Shinto Buddhist, and he says there's a structure there that he couldn't understand. He just said that it's just there. You just kind of deal with it.
Dave, I want to deal with as many listener questions as we can deal with.
Listener questions have been slow tonight, to be blunt.
Okay.
But that always happens with me. I don't get a lot of listener questions. Dave will tell you.
That's because Olav gives the answers right way before the questions come up. All right, guys, 5 seconds. Here we go.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to say thank you to everyone tuning in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free for you by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. What do you got for us, Clam? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? It just kind of disappeared on us. Oh, there it is. There it is. Ignutic. Ignutic is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. For the final time tonight, we introduce Science Bob and Friends. Dr. Bob McGwier, formerly of Virginia Tech University, is here with us to talk about the who, what, where, when, why of the paranormal, supernatural, encrypted, and UFO worlds. Our special guest tonight from Paranoia Magazine, and he's a book publisher of Alan Greenfield's The Secret Cipher of the UFO Knots, Mr. Olav Phillips. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Oh, it's been a great night, Dave.
It really has. Really has. Olav,
hey,
go ahead, Olav.
There's one thing I wanted to mention before you ask me more questions. I know there's a little woo in all this, but one of the things that I wanted to point out is that, and I think I got a lot of this from Alan as well as my own life experience. for me personally, when I think of these things like ultra-terrestrials and magic and occultism and free illuminism and the complete Cipher of the UFO knots and all this stuff, the way that I think about it is more. Your guests may disagree, but I think of it as more of a scientific model. Now, granted, there you have problems with the blind testing and the replication that pure science requires, but it's always been my belief that these things that we're interfacing, because we're interfacing something, I think we can all agree to that. But for me personally, when I see these things that we're interfacing, it's something that's always been there. And so it's been my firm belief that somewhere in the deep recesses of time, whether it was the Sumerians or the people that are in the Mahabharata and the Vedas, I mean, however far back you want to go, that at some point these things that we're talking about tonight, they were actually more scientific in nature, that they comprised some sort of a lost science. And, maybe it's the dystopian in me, but somewhere along the lines, we lost the knowledge of how to interface these things on a more quantitative level and we reduced it down to, we perform these rituals and these things happen, or we go into a trance and these things happen. I think once upon a time, this was more normalized and more structured, but this is where we've gotten to today because the knowledge that backed it up was lost and we're busy trying to rediscover it. So I wanted to say that.
Oh, that's great. Yes. So you and I are of a like mind in that. But look, observing these phenomenon is with any kind of physical instrumentality, a sensor, etc., is the definition of observational science. Where we get in trouble is when we try to make a hypothesis that's testable and falsifiable. And it's hard to test something if you can't control it. So we can do all sorts of observational science, but we're going to have a really hard time making falsifiable, testable hypotheses.
Absolutely. Because we can't control it. Exactly. I mean, you can control it, like when you're doing this stuff, like there's an element of control that you have, but the results are not reproducible, that the results change. And so it's you can't follow through a pure scientific method. But I do personally try to keep it as scientifically aligned as I can.
Well, look,
I don't want to
physicists fire photons and electrons at two slits. They can't tell where it's going to land on the wall behind them, but they still can do science. So look, what I feel is the scientific community has, up until this date, because of biases, a active denial, a disinformation program, etc., has relegated the field to the backwaters that can't get funding, so no real science can be done. But it's just there's no science being done that's of the type that would be required to find out if there are repeatable phenomena that are controllable to some extent. And the UFO field right now is replete with this big rumor that what was going on with the USS Nimitz carrier group in 2004, and the reason the MIB and the Air Force and everybody else was standing there ready to grab all the evidence is they were intentionally provoking the entity to try to get them to show up. So they had derived sufficient information to run a massively expensive experiment. And it sounds right.
This coincides with a book that Nick Redfern wrote a while back called about the Collins Elite. That they had a DoD funded program with a bunch of guys that were trying to do this kind of stuff. They were called the Collins Elite. So the DoD in general has, as well as the Soviets. They had an entire division of the KGB that was dedicated to this kind of thing. So, it is actively being sought out, just not in the commercial world. It's buried in DARPA. So,
okay. So
I wouldn't. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, please finish.
Well, I was going to say that it wouldn't surprise my first reaction to the Tic Tac was that it was a drone, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were trying to do that. I would not be surprised.
The problem with the drone is we have these FLIR videos and other instrumentalities that other people who were there have described, and there's no evidence whatsoever of man-made propulsion. You don't have rotor wash, you don't have exhaust. It's hard to see how that could be a drone. Okay, all right, but look, I don't want.
That's a different show.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to leave the topic we're on tonight,
sure. No
largely around Alan, without having you discuss the book, the content, what he was after when he's talking about Wicca, occult, and Necronomicon, etc., and witchcraft secrets revealed.
Well, Alan's about knowledge. Everything that I know about him is about knowledge. Like he's like an encyclopedia for this stuff, and he has spent his entire, he has graduate degrees, he has a PhD, and he's a very well-educated man. He has sought knowledge in every form and experimented with all kinds of systems to try to find what's going on. I think the best way to explain it is that he is a seeker of knowledge, a true seeker of knowledge. And, it's funny when I talk about the Grail within, right, that when you read the book, that, it sounds salacious, but what it actually is it's an exploration of does sex magic exist, right? And he talks about the methods, and he talks about the psychology, and he talks about the belief systems, and he talks about everything. When you read the complete Cipher, secret Cipher of the UFOnauts, it's not a book. It's not a kind of wooey book. I mean, it's very.
It's not.
No, it's very.
It's not.
No, it's very dense because it's basically a manual on how to use the Cipher. We've debated. I'm basically on the hook to write a supplement for it that gives easy instructions, because he went down the whole rabbit hole and got very sophisticated in explaining how it works and what it's doing and all these other things. But he is a seeker of knowledge, that his end goal is gnosis, that he wants to know what's going on. He wants to know everything that he can. So, he, as a person, speaking of somebody, who interacts with him a lot, as a person, he's constantly going out and monitoring things and bringing that in and saying, okay, what does that mean to the larger theory? What does that mean here? What does that mean there? He wrote the book about witchcraft, that, it's a historical treatise on the evolution of it. But in doing that, he's gaining knowledge about the systems that are involved in it, whether you're a Gardnerian Wiccan or you're a chaos magician or you're an alchemist, whatever. He's trying to bring all those disparate things together to kind of create a world view, like a systemic view of these things operating. And everything that he's ever written that I've read or looked at, it's always very much about, this kind of a systemic approach to, tying it all together, because he's bringing in UFOs and cryptids and ultra-terrestrials and conspiracy theories and magic and occultism and, somebody's birthday, and he's bringing it all together to try to understand it from a systemic point of view. So, it's always about, just trying to map it and create this system portrait of where we are and what we're doing and what we're able to do. But I think my own personal opinion is that, he's seeking pure gnosis, this idea that he's found ultimate knowledge. That would be my appraisal of it.
Dave, give us a question.
We got a couple of questions from our audience here, gentlemen. If you don't mind going down that road with me. And Armando is asking if the Collins elite would oppose Chris Bledsoe's type of disclosure.
What type of disclosure is that?
Well, I think Bob would be a good one on this one.
I not only do I believe the answer is yes, I believe that they have tried.
Okay, let's just stop right there for a quick second. For people who may not know out there who the Collins elite is, define that for us.
Okay, so the Collins elite is supposed to be a group of extremely religious, highly placed people in and around the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. And there seems to be indication that they operate in and around Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and are housed in the Battelle Institute. Now, I just can't lay out for you all the evidence it would take to get through all of that, but it's a group that's been around for a long time, and it appears that they are part of the pattern of squelching any serious inquiry into whatever these ultra-terrestrials or aliens are inside the UFOs, should they exist. And given that I've seen them, it's something. But they're actively squelching interest, and I believe they think that the thing behind these phenomena are demons from their deeply religious feelings.
The other part of it is that at some point in the past they have tried through various methods to elicit religious events to occur, whether opening gateways into various places or getting religious entities to show up. That's all part of it as well. But they're not just trying to quash the research into this stuff, but also, more importantly, that they're undertaking their own research using different people to try to access this other world from a religious point of view. Mm-hmm. But they are very highly placed people within the Pentagon and the greater DoD. And my suspicion is that some of the things that they're doing are hidden within compartmentalized programs within DARPA, because DARPA pretty much gets a blank check. And it's so compartmentalized that you have no idea what the guy sitting next to you is doing. I have a great story about it, but we'll save that for another show.
All right.
I've worked on 4 different really black programs. One of them for DARPA. I'm not allowed to even say what it was, and who it was with, who it was doing, what the purpose was, and I'll never be able to as long as I live. That is how deeply controlled these very dark compartments are.
And I bet it was awesome.
It was
amazing.
It was utterly fantastic.
I've been there, man. I've been there. I know what you mean.
Yeah. All right, let's get to Brian's question here, guys. Brian is asking, so why doesn't your friend Chris Bledsoe let Skyhub out their camera pointing up on his property then? It's the best science we can do with UFOs. What good is finding all you need is this camera?
Okay, so I understand that everybody wants Chris to be a Superman. Chris is not a Superman. He has lots of impediments related to his health. Now, that's all I'm going to say, except he is very susceptible to infection. And the pandemic completely put the kibosh on me and others going out there and taking the Skyhub equipment. And it's just going to take time till we get past all of this. I realize that people want to see stuff from the equipment, and that doesn't mean we're not going to do the collection of this data around others who have big time experiences. And so I'll give you an example. Melinda Leslie takes tour groups out and shows them UFOs basically every night of the week. And she's going to take a Skyhub, and we've got a location for it, which will go unannounced, but we'll be able to gather video and other evidence from the things that are flying around her tour groups. So that's just one. We're not sitting here waiting. What's that?
I got a place for you.
That's great.
If you go to Pyramid Lake, if you take the trajectory of the aircraft that are passing over ECETI and you put it on a map, they're going over Pyramid Lake toward Mount Adams. So I think if you went out to Pyramid Lake north of Reno, you should see some pretty fun stuff.
That's great. It's terrific.
Yeah.
Mount Adams is certainly a hot spot. That's on my radar.
I've been there, and it's insane. I saw an aurora there, the aircraft.
Wow. Wow. So Jimmy Church took an amazing video out at Mount Adams. It was just amazing. Yeah. So that's definitely on the radar.
All
Dave,
right.
what else you got?
Well, we got another question here from Stetson John, who only listens to this show while wearing his Stetson hat. And he is asking, do you guys have any opinions on Robert Anton Wilson's books like Cosmic Trigger?
I'm unfamiliar.
I love Robert Anton Wilson. I think, but a lot of it is about the trickster and, Discordianism in general. And, I like it. I think it's fascinating myself.
All right. Boogie on down is asking, do we have any names of who is in the Collins Elite?
I think Redford published some of them.
Yeah, Redford did, but I can't verify his sources of information.
No.
Because they're secret sources.
Yeah, he got it from a guy that he knew that was an Episcopal priest, I believe. But he won't disclose who that guy was.
All right, we got 2 minutes left, gentlemen. And Crystal Light is asking, why can't you put names into the secret cipher? I've already done it, and now I'm a bit nervous.
Well, you can. What I didn't explain that well. So you absolutely can put names into it. I mean, Greenfield's initial excursion into the cipher was to put the names of these entities that appeared during the contactee era. What I meant was that you can't. It's how you use it, but you absolutely can put a name into it, and you'll get a response. You shouldn't feel nervous. It won't break anything. But what you shouldn't do is treat it like a tarot card. I think that, or like a tarot reading, or like a psychic reading. That's more like what's going to happen to John tomorrow. It's like you can't use it like that. But you absolutely can put a name. In fact, you should. You'll get weird responses. But its most powerful way that you can use it, the most efficient way, is to intent the name or intent what you want to know, and then put keywords into it based on the intention that you're sending. So if you want to know what's going to happen to John tomorrow, you'd say in your mind, what's going to happen to John tomorrow? And then you could put in like road trip or, driving, mountains, things like that. It's not that you can't do it. It's just what's optimally efficient is to leverage intent and keywords.
We interrupted broadcast for a behind-the-scenes interview.
Sorry about that. But yeah, so that
I got scared. I got scared there for a minute, wondering what the heck was that.
Yeah, you want to make an appearance on the show.
Oh, awesome!
No, you
awesome.
you
That's
absolutely
fantastic.
can. Sorry. You absolutely can and should put names into it. I explained that poorly. My advice to you in using it is to leverage intent and keywords. So it's kind of like think of what you want to search on Google and then put in some keywords. Kind of like that.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Gentlemen, we got to wrap this thing up because apparently we're done. Science Bob, we'll talk to you next month, my friend.
It was great. Olaf, it was such a tremendous pleasure.
Thanks, Olav.
Oh, Science Bob, it was absolutely amazing. I really enjoyed it.
Coming up next, we have the SOR Newswire and the Thought of the Dave. Stay tuned. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. Thought we were getting. I honestly thought I had a pop-up happen.
No, that was my son. He's taking a shower. He decided to make an appearance.
That is awesome.
I have to do the interviews outside, and I let him stay up late, right? Because, he should have gone to sleep like over an hour and a half ago, but I let him stay up because I do the show outside because he's loud.
Well, tell him thank you for scaring the hell out of me. That was awesome.
I will tell him that. He'll laugh. He'll laugh diabolically.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
All right, man.
All right.
So Olaf, is Greenfield in Atlanta?
Yes, he's in Atlanta.
Oh, he's only 90 minutes from me. My mother is in a home over there. Does he make public appearances at all?
Yes, just not during COVID.
No, I get that. No, I got it. I just got
actually,
my second vaccine.
Yeah, I'm about to get my first. But once the COVID thing is died down, I'm actually going to take him to Mount Shasta, and we're going to attempt to communicate with the mountain and activate stuff. I actually did
maybe you can get a Zendra going.
What?
Maybe you can get a Zendra going.
There you go. Or open a portal, get some tulpas. We'll do something. But I actually had a CE5. I manifested a CE5 on the side of Shasta. So when this all blows over, I'm going to actually take him to Shasta. We're going to film it and try to get the mountain to talk to us.
Fantastic.
So, gentlemen.
Yeah, and I've got night vision gear. I
gotta run here. I gotta get ready for the news.
All right. Take care, Dave.
All right.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Care,
and
guys.
Olav, thank you for filling in for Alan.
It was wonderful.
Oh, no problem at all. Okay.
All right, boys.
All right, bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Good times there with Science Bob and Olav. Good frickin' times. Big thank you to Steam Train Mark in Australia. Please let us know how tomorrow is looking and if we are alive. Hi, Rafaela in the Czech Republic. How are you? Brian, I apologize. I didn't get to your question. John Doe, how you doing, man? I love that show. Is there any video of this process of the Zendras there, Stetson John? No. There's just very wild descriptions of it. Grant Cameron probably has the best breakdown of it, where he actually did some serious notes on it. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that, because he actually saw one form at Mount Shasta. Thank you for the confirmation, Steam Train Mark. Really appreciate it. Oh, my goodness. Lovely and gorgeous Teresa. Thank you for that awesome super chat. That's really nice. She's sending love to everybody. Excuse me. So thank you to gorgeous Teresa. Thank you to Steam Train Mark. Thank you to Sig Sauer. And to Wagon Breath for the amazing super chats tonight. Thank you for your love and support of this show. It is like 1 million Canadian kroners, that's right. Super Quest, do you have your cape on tonight while you're working? Hey, gorgeous Amy O, how are you? Do 10 seconds. I'm dedicating this news run to the lovely and talented Amy O from Las Vegas. We've rounded third. We're heading to home here on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. I'm the guy on this side of the microphone, and I thank each and every one of you for tuning us on in. I want to remind you that if you've missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Speaking of the news, let's do this thing just for you tonight, Amy. The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every show, where we get to the weird, the strange, the wacky, and sometimes the downright odd. A former Panda Express employee, this is a strange one, said she was pressured to strip down to her undies in front of colleagues and strangers during a trust-building exercise. According to a civil complaint, 23-year-old Jennifer Spargifiore filed a suit last month in Los Angeles County Superior Court. Panda Express and Alive Seminars, a coaching academy, a self-improvement consulting. There go the life coaches again. All of these fake BS life coaches that are all defendants in the suit. So this is what happened. Apparently, Spargifiore worked for Panda Express between 2016 and 2019, primarily in northern LA County, suburb of Santa Clarita. She was at the Alive seminars and says they were often a prerequisite to promotion. So much so that attendees were required to provide their work ID numbers so seminar fees could be debited directly from their Panda Express employee accounts. The days-long sessions, however, were bizarre and quickly devolved into psychological abuse, according to the lawsuit. During one session on July 13, 2019, Spargifiore was pressured into an exercise wherein she was forced to strip down to her underwear under the guise of trust building. According to the complaint, she stripped almost naked in front of strangers and coworkers, was extremely uncomfortable, but pressed on because she knew it was her only chance at a promotion, the lawsuit said. Meanwhile, Alive seminar staff were openly ogling the woman in their state of undress, smiling and laughing. Later in this exercise, the young lady and a male participant, also down to his underwear, were allegedly forced to stand in front of the group to hug it out. The seminar more and more resembled a cult initiation ritual as time went on. After the young lady left the seminar early, she was constructively terminated from her position with Panda Express in July 2019. The suit, which said that Spargiafiore was a victim of sexual battery, a hostile work environment, and infliction of emotional distress, did not name a dollar figure for damages. Panda Restaurant Group, the Rosemead, California-based parent company of Panda Express, said it is conducting its own investigation of the allegations outlined in the lawsuit. We do not condone this kind of behavior described in the lawsuit, and it is deeply concerning to us, according to a company statement. And we are committed to providing a safe environment for all associates and stand behind our core values to treat people with respect. You know what? I'm just going to say it. I know people who've got involved with these bogus life coaches. All right? Stay away from them. 99% of them are just there to cash grab you at an emotional state in your life. Stay away from these frauds. They are garbage. Anybody who uses the term life coach, immediately check their resume. If they have on their Facebook page or their LinkedIn more than 5 jobs over the last, say, 15 years, 10 years maybe, you may not want to trust them to make the best decisions in your life. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Bogus life coaches, that's the biggest fraud next to pyramid schemes back in the 2000s. Horrible. A 22-year-old Florida man accused of performing a sex act with a stuffed unicorn and an Olav doll from the Disney blockbuster Frozen has been ordered to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. No kidding. Yeah, the hearing will take place next month. Cops say Cody Meter was busted in a St. Petersburg Target store. Oh, you got to start this story off as Florida man. This is high-quality Florida man right here. All right, Meter, by the way, did not head to the bargain bin, no. Instead, police say the Disney enthusiast began rubbing his genitals against the 2 stuffed animals before pleasuring himself to completion with the Olav character. Now, according to the store, security video captured the 6'2", 220-pound Meter hovering around the bin of stuffed animals. He was wearing a Star Wars t-shirt and shorts when he was overcame with his carnal desires. A store employee told officers that Meter kicked off his sexual frenzy by dry humping a unicorn before turning his attention to Olav the doll. Oh my goodness, I don't mean to laugh. Oh, at the time of the assault of the doll, Meter showed no signs of drug or alcohol use. However, his mental status was clocked in at an unknown. Yeah, no kidding. Meter is charged with criminal mischief and exposing his sexual organs. Following the incident, he confessed to doing stupid stuff. His dad told the officers he has a history of this type of behavior. The stuffed toys were destroyed. Thank goodness, Target staff said, citing the circumstances. Yeah, you don't want to have sexual relations with stuffed animals in a Target. I'm just saying that. That's not a good idea. Not a good idea at all. Scary one here. An Oregon hiker is thankful to be alive after they fell off more than 100 feet from an oceanside cliff while celebrating their birthday. Gil Teague said that they would like to remember turning 25 following the close call at Hug Point State Park near Arch Cape, Oregon. Teague, who prefers they and them pronouns, was hiking with their partner when they fell more than 100 feet off the ocean cliff. They ended up landing on the rocks, suffering multiple injuries, including a broken arm and fractures in their face, nose, ribs, left elbow, and hip. I have to say, I wasn't sure my 25th birthday would top the last 2 parties I had, but this will definitely be the hardest to forget. Yeah, it's pretty simple. You want to stay away from the edge. You want to stay away from the edge. You just do. Scary times. I don't know. When I walk trails where there's like an edge, I go to the other side. Maybe you don't. I do. That's just me. If you're totaling your car and barely surviving a serious crash while trying to avoid a flying sofa, yeah, you may get in trouble in Washington, D.C. So, here's the story. All right? So, a couple returning from a trip to Florida, they were driving along the highway near Fort Pierce, okay, following the rollover of their 2006 Toyota Corolla on I-95. Jake Singer and his girlfriend were presented with an unwanted gift by Florida Highway Patrol because Florida does things a little backwards at times. They were giving a $166 ticket for failing to drive in a single lane. So the guy goes on to say, the cop gave us a ticket for basically swerving lanes while trying to avoid a couch that was flying at us on the highway. Singer says the passenger in the car, that is his girlfriend, was driving. We got so pissed off about this, as you should. Fight this in court. There could be some good news for the couple, though. Yeah, that's because the Florida Highway Patrol said it will recommend the ticket be dismissed. According to spokesman Lieutenant Yanko Reyes, FHP is working with the courts to have the citation dismissed after supervisors conducted a meeting in reference to this incident, and a decision was made that the citation had been issued in error, thus recommending of dismissal seems reasonable. Really, they're trying to avoid a couch flying at them, and your officer was dumb enough to give them a ticket for this. That is not an error. That is stupidity. That is going above and beyond what the badge is about. Yes, a couple was returning to Washington after spending a month visiting family in Boca Raton when a couch fell off a truck in front of them. To avoid the wayward sofa, the woman, who didn't want to be identified, swerved and collided with the median, causing their car to roll over. No other vehicles were involved, and the truck that dropped the couch, oh, by the way, did not stop. Kept going. Obviously he didn't want the couch. A teenager who lost his iPhone while whitewater rafting here in British Columbia was reunited with the device when it washed up on an island 8 months later. Patty Backus said she frequently combs the beaches in front of her main island home for trash, and on one recent morning she found a Frisbee, a $20 bill, and an iPhone 7 in a watertight case. Backus recounted on Twitter how she had opened the case, charged the phone, and her husband Lee correctly guessed the passcode 123456. Backus found a contact for Mom and texted the number, discovering the phone belonged to the woman's son, Hunter Hoffman, who's just 16 years old. Hoffman said he lost his phone when his raft overturned on the Coquitlam River in July. The phone apparently spent 8 months in the water, making its way to Pickett Bay and ending up on the beach. It's bizarre how far it traveled, and there's not even any damage to the phone, Hoffman's mother Angela said. Backus said solving the mystery was a fun diversion from the monotony of the COVID pandemic. I'm keeping the $20 in the Frisbee, and I'll keep picking up the garbage off the beach. I think the moral of the story is go clean up a beach and buy a good case for your phone. Moving on. It's true, one man's trash could be another one's treasure. Yes. Why? Here we go. No matter what, you probably never expect anyone to be happy about finding a pile of puke. But some people, it's a little bit different, and you can cash in on it. How? Let's tell you. Let's go to Thailand, where Nakhon Si Thammarat and his resident 49-year-old Siriporn Niamrin, all right, they got pretty lucky. On February 23rd, Niamrin was on a walk at the beach after a rainstorm some 500 yards from her home. That's when a small Win right there was standing or sitting or laying right on the beach. But as she was walking along, she discovered a strange lump. About a foot wide, 2 feet long, the thing resembled a rock with an off-color white with brown patches. It definitely wasn't a rock, though. The texture was all weird, and the lump smelled faintly of fish. Most people would probably just have ignored the thing as some type of garbage of the sea carried on. Niemren, though, well, she thought that this misshapen blob might somehow be worth a few bucks, so she decided to pick up the 15-pound object, carried it back to her house, and she'll be glad she did. Why? It's worth $250,000. It's whale puke. Whale vomit, also known as ambergris, is an incredibly precious commodity. It is widely used as an ingredient in most expensive perfumes, and as such it could sell for a pretty penny. To check whether the thing was indeed genuine, bona fide whale upchuck, Niemren and her neighbors held a match up to the lump. The material quickly began to melt as they moved the flame away. It solidified just as fast, just like real ambergris does. Niemren isn't taking any chances, though, and she has asked the local town council to arrange for an expert to come and evaluate the lump. It is well worth it. Based on recent market values, Niemren's hunk of puke could be worth more than $250,000. If it really is a genuine ambergris, I can help my community once I find a buyer for it, the selfless young lady said. I feel lucky to have such a large piece. I hope it will bring me money. I'm keeping it safe in my house, and I have asked the local council to visit to check it. Wow, that's amazing. $250,000 for puke. $250,000. Who would have thought? The Wisconsin State Patrol shared a photo from a traffic stop in which a trooper discovered the driver of the vehicle was sitting on a camping chair. Troopers posted the photo on Twitter explaining that the vehicle had been stopped in the north central region. The vehicle was pulled over for an equipment violation, the tweet said. On his approach, the trooper noticed the vehicle was not equipped with seats and the driver was seated in a camping chair. The tweet did not say whether the driver was ticketed or given a warning. What about a seatbelt infraction? They're not even worried about the seatbelt infraction there. You know, this is scary. I've seen a couple of videos of these. This is freaky. A ski instructor at a Romanian resort captured a video of a bear chasing him down a slope for several minutes before the animal fled into the woods. The video recorded at the Predeal ski resort shows the bear following the skier down the slopes for several minutes. The bear eventually turned back and ran into the forest. Officials say the person who filmed it was a ski instructor who was trying to draw the bear away from other skiers and back towards the woods. The incident took place just weeks after riders on a chairlift at the same resort captured a video of a bear chasing a skier. The skier in that video was able to escape from the bear by dropping his backpack, which distracted the animal while he got away. Romanian Environment Minister Tansos Barna says officials are considering relocating the bear after the most recent incident, but he is concerned the animal will still pose a danger to people in other locations. He said he is looking at solutions to cope with the country's high populations of bears. Finally tonight, scary one in Michigan. A Michigan sheriff's office shared a video of the moment a car traveling on a rural road was jumped over and onto by deer in a sudden stampede. The dashboard footage shows the car traveling on the road through a wooded area when a large group of deer suddenly start bounding across the road. The car quickly comes to a stop, and some deer jump right over the vehicle, while some end up jumping onto the car and either jumping off or falling off. The sheriff's office said no humans or deer were injured in the incident. Another reminder not to drive a Prius in such dangerous deer-filled areas. Thought of the Day happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages. Then you read your responses on the air because we love the audience participation around here. Today's Thought of the Day is as follows. If you could work on a mystery full-time, what would it be? And why? Cherry Pepsi Mike. Conscious studies. Why is the registered fMRI brain activity so low during psychedelic experiences, yet they can generate such vivid experiences? Craig. Consciousness. It all points to the body and mind being separate, but what does that mean? Davey. It would be investigating Yorkshire's UFO sightings and their proximity to the Neolithic petroglyphs. Ben, why am I always late? Eric with a K, he wants to find Bigfoot. You know, we are Eric with a K's fourth favorite show. We're number 4 in Eric's books. We used to be number 5. We moved up, though. We're number 4. Sophia, I have a site worth checking out in Carbondale, Colorado. Had a high-tech near CE5 last August, but I felt protective of my friend and chased them off. Risk level is decently high, but it's not that far from public services. Paul, consciousness, survival, and non-locality. Brad, I want to find the missing link. Mr. Physics, aerial school case. I mean, why not? Strafe, the secrets behind the Wonka bar. Oh, yeah, we all need to find out that one. Let's move on. Sparkles, the mysterious booms that are heard, but it appears that the reason is not identified. Why? Because it may be important for our planet to have the source identified. Katie, the missing and appeared. So much evidence that it does happen. So little evidence as to why, how, when, where. It's intriguing because there has to be physics involved somehow, but I'm really bad when it comes to all that clever thinking. Does it make the mind go, though? Ryan, Canadian disclosure. I am working on it full time. Why? Because no one is financially set and able to do it accurately. We are, and it needs to be done. Eugene wants to look into the Bermuda Triangle. Davey? Well, we already read yours. Robert, missing 411. So bizarre, and no answers. Chris Wolford, otherwise known as Chrisomania on Twitter. The Wilson notes. Scott, women. I like the challenge. All right. Gil wants to look into the Holy Grail. James, why a moron and lunatic consistently gets way better than deserves. Plus, why so good-looking and lucky, it's not even fair. Somebody's jealous. William, either Dyatlov Pass or the Steve Kubacki incident. Roswell for Greg. Bobby wants to look into OBEs, NDEs, and reincarnation. We got time for a couple more. Nikki, I am at the INTJ on the Myers-Briggs personality test. I basically research mysteries full time, try to squeeze in working, and have a life around that. Sometimes I sleep. Tim, missing 411. Scarlet, already am the evil in this world and to save it. Paul John Tavares, still no Stanley Cup for you. Woodchucking, cold hard fact. How much freaking wood can a woodchuck chuck? We need answers. Finally tonight, Hallmark Corey gets the final word. I would like to spend my time trying to figure out why I am such a big Coldplay fan. Corey saying I to him because he loves his Coldplay. Because I need help, he says. And I agree with you, Corey. No grown man should ever admit to liking Coldplay. Just one of those things. It's like admitting you're a Toronto Maple Leafs or a soccer fan or a New York Mets fan. You don't want that in your life. You don't want that. Thank you to everybody participating in the Thought of the Dave. Thank you to Captain Shirk and Olav Phillips and Science Bob for a wonderful show tonight. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight on Facebook, LGAB, Spreaker, Revolution Radio, Twitter. Now we'll get to Twitter and all the snarkers and snarkettes there at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, say it with me, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo Train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night.